The war was not over by Christmas. That optimistic, almost naive dream, which had sent millions of young men marching in the summer of 1914, had shattered against the brutal realities of modern warfare. That illusion was gone, buried in the frozen mud of the previous winter. The first Christmas had come and gone, marked not by victory parades, but by a fragile, unofficial truce in some sectors. A brief, poignant moment of shared humanity that only highlighted the madness that would follow. Now, as 1915 dawned, the reality set in. This was not a war of movement, of cavalry charges and grand maneuvers. It was something new, something monstrous, a grim, industrial reality. The war had become a vast, continent-spanning machine, fueled by steel, chemicals, and human lives. The front lines were the bloody cutting edge of entire nations mobilized for total conflict. This was the year the world learned a new word: stalemate. It was a term that sounded deceptively static, but for the men in the trenches, it meant a daily, grinding terror. And in trying to break it, the war descended into new depths of horror, and witnessed moments of incredible dark humor, the last defense of a mind pushed to its absolute limit. The Western Front was locked, a vast open-air prison of mud and fear. Two parallel lines of trenches, a complex latticework of front lines, support trenches and communication lines, snaked for 475 miles from the coast to the mountains. A no-man's land of wire and corpses between them. This shattered landscape, sometimes only a few dozen yards wide, was a place where nature itself had died, replaced by a lunar wasteland of craters, skeletal trees, and the ever-present threat of the sniper's bullet. Attacks were costly, futile affairs. The generals, trained in 19th century tactics, still believed that a massive artillery bombardment, followed by a mass infantry charge, could achieve a breakthrough. Men would go over the top, climbing from the relative safety of their trench and rushing into a storm of machine gun fire, a weapon that had turned the battlefield into a meat grinder. Gains were measured in yards, for a cost of thousands of lives. A successful attack might capture the enemy's frontline trench, only to be thrown back by a counterattack hours later. It was a brutal arithmetic of attrition. The grim logic was simple: kill more of the enemy than they kill of you, until one side simply ran out of men. Then, on April 22, 1915, near the Belgian town of Ypres, the rules changed forever. The stalemate had bred a desperate search for a new key, a new way to break the deadlock. The German High Command, frustrated by the lack of progress, turned to its scientists. German soldiers, watching the wind, opened valves on thousands of canisters, over 5,700 of them, containing 168 tons of a chemical agent. A strange, greenish-yellow cloud began to drift across no man's land. It was heavier than air, so it sank into every shell hole, every crater, and flowed into the trenches like a liquid. It was chlorine gas, the brainchild of chemist Fritz Haber, who argued that chemical warfare was no more or less ethical than shelling a man with shrapnel. To him, it was simply a more efficient way to clear a trench. The French colonial troops in its path had no idea what was happening. They thought it was a smokescreen for an infantry attack, but then the smell hit them, a sharp metallic scent like pineapple and pepper. The gas seared their lungs, reacting with the water in their bodies to form hydrochloric acid. It caused a terrifying drowning death on dry land as their own lungs filled with fluid. The line broke. A 4-mile hole opened in the front. Men fled in panic, their faces blue, gasping for air. It was a sight of pure, unadulterated terror. It was a scientific atrocity the moment the laboratory became a direct and horrifying extension of the battlefield. But here's a grim, almost funny footnote to the horror, a moment of supreme military irony. The German High Command was so skeptical of this new weapon, they hadn't prepared reserves to exploit the breakthrough. They didn't really believe it would work. The gas attack was seen as an experiment, not a war-winning move. By the time they did, Canadian troops, in a moment of desperate battlefield science, realized the chlorine was water-soluble. Using makeshift cloths soaked in urine, the ammonia providing a crude chemical filter, they had rushed in to plug the gap. The element of surprise, born from a weapon of terror, was squandered. The greatest tactical opportunity created by gas in the entire war was lost within hours due to a failure of imagination. But the genie was out of the bottle. Poison gas was now a tool of war. Soon, both sides would develop deadlier agents. Phosgene, mustard gas, and the gas mask would become an iconic, terrifying symbol of the conflict. Faced with the deadlock in France and seeking a way around it, the Allies concocted a grand plan. A gamble. If they couldn't break through the front door, perhaps they could sneak in the back. Winston Churchill, then First Lord of the Admiralty, was a key architect. Energetic, ambitious, and chafing at the stalemate, he championed a bold naval strike. The idea: attack the soft underbelly of the Central Powers. Force a passage through the Dardanelles Strait with the Royal Navy's powerful battleships. Capture the Ottoman capital of Constantinople. Knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war, and open a vital warm water supply line to their struggling ally, Russia. It was a theory that ignored geography. After a purely naval attempt failed in March, the decision was made to land troops. The Gallipoli Peninsula, where Allied troops landed on April 25, 1915, just 3 days after the first gas attack at Ypres, was a defender's dream. Steep cliffs, rugged ravines, and dug-in, determined Ottoman troops commanded by a then unknown but brilliant colonel named Mustafa Kemal. He understood the terrain and the stakes, famously telling his men, "I am not ordering you to attack, I am ordering you to die." The landings, particularly by the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the Anzacs, were a disaster. Due to navigational errors, they came ashore at the wrong beach, a cramped cove surrounded by heights. They were pinned down immediately, trapped on a tiny sliver of land under the guns of the defenders. The campaign became a smaller, hotter, even more hopeless version of the Western Front. Trenches were dug on cliffsides. Men died of disease, dysentery was rampant, as well as the heat, the swarms of flies feeding on the dead, and the constant, nerve-shredding sniper fire. The deadliest moments were relentless and intimate. Yet, in this pressure cooker, the Anzacs developed a legendary dark sense of humor. Short on proper grenades, they became experts in making improvised ones. Jam tin bombs, filled with shrapnel and gun cotton, with a fuse poked through the lid. It was battlefield ingenuity born of pure necessity. They'd light it and lob it like a cricket ball. There are accounts of them shouting "jelly snack" as they threw them. It was a macabre joke in the face of oblivion, a way of asserting some small control, some defiance in a situation where they had none. And this is where a new technology starts to whisper in the background. Radio. Wireless telegraphy was in its infancy, bulky and unreliable. Its primary use was for long-range communication between ships and headquarters, not for tactical battlefield use. But at Gallipoli, it played a subtle, life-saving role for some. Allied ships offshore, equipped with radio receivers, could sometimes intercept and triangulate the signals from Ottoman field radios. This was the birth of signals intelligence, or SIGINT. They weren't decoding messages, but they could locate the headquarters tents of enemy commanders. This intelligence allowed for targeted naval bombardment. In a few instances, historians note, this radio interception may have disrupted attacks before they began, saving lives in the forward trenches by neutralizing the command and control of an assault. It was a ghost in the machine, a hint of the electronic warfare to come. There were lighter moments too. Amidst the flies and death at Gallipoli, soldiers adopted mascots, desperate for a connection to a world not defined by killing. One famous example was a little donkey known as Murphy, used by Private John Simpson Kirkpatrick to carry water cans and, later, wounded soldiers. He, and others like him, became a beloved living piece of home in a hellish landscape. The bond between a soldier and a simple animal. It was a tiny rebellion against the inhuman scale of the war, a reminder of a gentler world that seemed a lifetime away. But the Gallipoli gamble failed. After 8 months of brutal fighting and over 100,000 dead on each side, the Allies withdrew. It was one of the war's great tragedies, a strategic blunder that cost Churchill his job and scarred the national psyches of Australia and New Zealand forever. The stalemate wasn't broken. It had just been exported to a new shore, proving that there were no easy answers, no soft underbellies, only more fronts on which to bleed. By the end of 1915, the war had sunk deeper. It had become a global siege, fought with factories, chemistry, and the stubborn, weary courage of the men in the dirt. The home fronts were now inseparable from the battlefronts, with millions mobilized in industry to feed the insatiable appetite of the guns. The deadliest moments were no longer just battles. They were the daily reality of a world learning to weaponize everything, even the air itself. And yet, the human spirit still flickered. In a crude joke, in the care for a donkey, in the desperate ingenuity of a jam-tin bomb. These were not acts of war, but acts of humanity, surviving against all odds in the heart of the inferno. As we look at the stark choices of 1915, the gas, the Gallipoli gamble, which do you find represents the greater tragedy of that year? The introduction of industrial chemical warfare, a cold, scientific solution to the stalemate, or the catastrophic failure of high-stakes military strategy, a bold but flawed plan that cost hundreds of thousands of lives? Share your thoughts below.